Greetings. I go by the name Malakizadak Israel. In today's video, we're going to go into the Haitian contribution to the Americas, the Haitian Revolution uprising, and the struggle for freedom, the fight for liberty, justice for all, the Haitian Revolution, and what happened to the Black American Revolution as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hit like and subscribe, share the video, donate, go into the description box, make sure you contribute, and I hope you guys learn a lot from my teachings or these videos. Let's do it.
The black man, within a very few years, will build up his own political party. The politics of this world is made by the white man.
By who?
You don't have any yourself. The white man makes all his politics. Then he teaches our people those laws or politics in which he has planned and devised himself. And there is so much crookedness in the white man's politics that you cannot win with his politics. There are three terms that black people in this country should learn at birth. One is white supremacy, one is neo-colonialism, and one is black power.
That's right.
The black man, within a very few years, will build up his own political.
When we open our eyes today and look around America, we see America not through the eyes of someone who has enjoyed the fruits of Americanism. We see America through the eyes of someone who has been the victim of Americanism. We don't see any American dream. We've experienced only the American nightmare.
The white man feels that the Negro can never live with him because it's the white man who is stopping integration. I'm not the one who is stopping Negroes from integrating with whites. I'm not the one who keeps Negroes from integrating white schools. And so don't put the burden of proof on me. It is the white man himself who is guilty and whose guilt proves that the Negro and the white man can't live side by side.
Say what?
When we open our eyes today and look around America, we see America not through the eyes of someone who has enjoyed the fruits of Americanism.
All right, check this one out.
And this too, this is Haiti. Liberty cannot subsist without toil. That too was Haiti, is Haiti. The voice of Toussaint Louverture, whose father was a king in Africa, who lived to see slavery die in Haiti. It is not much recorded in the book of time how Haiti fought for the United States. 800 Negroes from the sunfields of the Caribbean fought in the snowfields of the colonies. And in the end, victory. Liberty! Liberty leaped the Atlantic. Liberty! Barricades rose in the streets of Paris. And the...
Hold up. Let's go to this real quick.
And this too, this is Haiti. Liberty cannot subsist without toil. That too was Haiti, is Haiti. The voice of Toussaint Louverture, whose father was a king in Africa, who lived to see slavery die in Haiti. It is not much recorded in the book of time how Haiti fought for the United States.
Did what?
800 Negroes from the sunfields of the Caribbean fought in the snowfields of the colonies. And in the end, victory. Liberty! Liberty leaped the Atlantic. Égalité! Barricades rose in the streets of Paris. Fraternité! And the guillotine fell. And fell. And fell. The people, slow in their wrath, swift to vengeance. And the tyrants learned that slaves, too, are people. I, Robespierre, in the name of the National Assembly of France, hereby abolish slavery in all the French colonies. Whereupon, Toussaint Louverture, the black man of Haiti, joined with the French garrisons to exterminate the Spanish and English. Men die, the people live. The little, aged, patient one, Toussaint. And there was with him the fierce, uncompromising Henri Christophe. Were we to cause torrents of blood to flow, to maintain our liberty, to fire 7/8 of the globe, we are innocent before God. And it came to pass that the black men of Haiti were visited by the English commander.
I had imagined you a different man, Toussaint.
We are all the same man under God.
Come over to our side. You will be
See, he believes in God. Toussaint believed in God, not voodoo.
king of this island. Stay with us, Toussaint, and be rich.
I am rich. I have a wife and many sons and the love of my people. Are there other riches? If so, the slave has not the wisdom of the master. I tell you to take your troops home, to leave our harbors under your own sail, or else we shall give your sails a more dangerous wind. You will buy and sell us no longer. The slave trade is over. We come to a new century.
Mass was said in all the churches. Santo Domingo and Haiti were independent, with loyalty to France. Toussaint was governor, and a constitution was drafted in 1800, prepared for dispatch to Napoleon by the Council of the Island.
How shall we address the dispatch?
His Most Reverend Excellency, or Majesty, that is it. Your Majesty.
We shall give him the most respectful of all salutations. To Citizen Bonaparte, First Consul of the French Republic.
All right, if y'all want to see the rest of that video, y'all can go check it out. It's called Hello Americans. I just wanted to play a part from that. Let's continue on. All right, so what is IET's mission? What is Haitians' mission? What are they really trying to do? Are they about the black power or what?
Haiti's mission is to create a land, a space where all black people who are in trouble anywhere in the world can come in and find refuge. This is a...
Say it again, baby girl.
Haiti's mission is to create a land, a space where all black people who are in trouble anywhere in the world can come in and find refuge. This is a land that the founders sat down and decided would be the refuge for all black people throughout the world. But their vision was, we're gonna create this space here as a place where any black person running from any kind of oppressing havoc, oppressing chaos,
we love all
they
blacks.
can come here.
IET.
And instantly, any black person who set foot on this land becomes automatically free and a citizen. So,
and that was the whole purpose, the whole goal, the whole mission. That's what it was. Politicians messed up the country now. That done sold out like the boule. But before, we were gonna come to America and try to free our black Americans, and we're gonna go up to France and Britain, England, and we're gonna go all out. But the revolution died down because of greed and stuff like that, and debt and ignorance in a way, and too much freedom, fear, politicians, corruption, just like any other government. So we got to fix these things internally, by us, of us, and for us. Haiti was a refuge for all blacks, even FBAs that were seeking refuge from oppression. You heard that? That's what we made our land when we became free. We weren't dissing other blacks and calling them tethers and words like that, or calling them names. We love all blacks, and remember, we're connected to Haiti, and we honor Aborigine indigenous people of the Americas, especially Taino Arawak, the people of Haiti, before black Haiti.
We're looking at a country that has set a model for black countries. The only country who had
Say that again, baby.
a citizen. So, we're looking at a country that has set a model for black countries. The only country who had a constitution which was in accord with what the purpose of the people. If we take a little look at the constitution of this country, the first constitution, the only valid constitution, Constitution of 1805, states clearly, this land is the land for all black folks.
For who?
States clearly.
Say that again, baby.
Constitution of 1805 states clearly, this land is the land for all black folks. Constitution of 1805 states clearly, this land is the land for all black folks. States clearly, any black person landing here becomes automatically free and a citizen. States clearly, no white man has the right to buy property here or work as master on this land.
We didn't integrate.
We must know.
We fought back. So Haiti was founded as a refuge for all blacks.
What is the purpose? A nation is what? A nation is a group of families that come together. They have past experience together, common past experience, and they established.
Listen.
We must know what is the purpose. A nation is what?
What's a nation?
A nation is a group of families that come together. They have past experience together, common past experience, and they established a common objective.
Black power.
When you have past experience, which give you culture together,
it does what?
And you establish objective. When you have past experience, which give you culture together, and you establish an objective to work towards, then you become a nation. And if we go back to the time where they were creating this country, Haiti, and please call it by its name, Haiti, not anything that you hear other people calling it.
Not Haiti.
Thank you.
Haiti.
This is a land that the founders sat down and decided would be the refuge for all black people throughout the world.
That's right, black power. Next one.
The founder of our country is Jean-Jacques Dessalines, and that's his chosen name. Having been caught into the Euro-Christian slavery system, he bore many names. As he was not a very docile person, he was often sold and in each plantation given a different name. But he managed to get his freedom and he named himself Jean-Jacques Dessalines. Fought for 14 years against the Spaniards, against the British, against the French, and won every time. Since 1802, to be specific, March 22, 1802, is when he made the formal promise. He told us we would sometimes have to fight. He will sometimes submit to European authorities, but always he will strike against them. And there will be a final battle.
There'll be a what?
We will force them to get out of this island. That day, I promise you, he said, I will give you independence. March 22, 1802. So the independence of Haiti was not a hazard, the fruit of hazard. It so happened because X, Y, Z. No, it was planned, programmed by Jean-Jacques Dessalines. Determined, specifics were given and asked. For example, in July 1803, he told the generals, if you can can assemble 40,000 troops, I will give the final blow to the French army. The other general said, I will bring 5,000. This one says I'll bring 4,000. The other one, I'll bring 6,000. All right. When we total it up, we should have 40,000. He says, all right. If on October 16, 1803, in the town of Lambay, you assemble 40,000 troops, then I will give you independence. But if I count 39,999 soldiers on October 16th before sunlight, that will mean you're not yet ready for independence. Therefore, I will drop the subject for now. And sure enough, everybody went to work to assemble their troops. And the population heard about this and decided they too could assemble troops. So people came, families came. Cousins, aunts, grandmothers, granddaughters, nieces, with whatever weapons they could find, sticks, stones, machetes, whatever. And they came and said, yes, we're ready to fight with you. So October 16, 1803, in Lambay, before the sunlight was out, Dessalines counted 40,000 troops. And the main generals had not yet arrived. Capois-Lamour was arriving around noon. Marcadieu was arriving even later. So here he was. He had the troops he needed. And he said, this is the final battle. We're going up north to do it. And so they marched on. And it brought us to battles after battle, and we came to the Battle of Vertières. On that day, November 18, 1803, Dessalines himself did not fight. I guess at that point, he just knew what he had. He didn't have to put his own weight into the battle. So he sat on top of a mountain, on a stone, playing with his tobacco powder and giving orders. Call this one. Tell him to attack here. Call this troop. Put them here by the river. This one by the bridge. That one over here. Telling everybody here, placing, just like somebody playing chess.
Like a real
just
man.
Positioning everything and sitting up there, not budging from early morning till night. Rain came and left. Rain returned and was gone. Dessalines sat there, giving orders, making things happen. When people talk about Capois-Lamour on November 18, and in the Battle of Vertières, they often make our children recite, yes, when Capois was fighting, a bullet hit his horse, a bullet hit his heart, and he said, let's continue the fight. But what they don't tell our children, that would be more useful, make them understand. Dessalines called one general and told him our flag must be placed on top of this hill in the next hour, within the next hour. This general said, yeah, but you see, the French have... Dessalines said, forget it. Call this other general for me. Other general came. Dessalines told him, in 40 minutes, we must have our flag up there. That general is hesitant also, and Dessalines said, call Capua. Capua comes. In 20 minutes, we must have our flag up there. Yes, Commandant. Capua salutes and goes. Capua goes and called Gabar. He told General Gabar, take your guys and the flag. Get up as far as you can. Get up to the top and plant the flag. That's an order from Dessalines. I will stay down here to attract the bullets from the French. So you will be protected to get up there quickly. So Gabar took his troops going up. Capua took his troops and faced the cannons. So it's not a chance. It's not a hazard. It's not like he was down here to attract the bullets from the and plant the flag. That's an order from Dessalines. I will stay down here to attract the bullets from the French. So you will be protected to get up there quickly. So Gabar took his troops going up. Capua took his troops and faced the cannons. So it's not a chance. It's not a hazard. It's not like he was surprised. He knew what he was doing. And he placed himself in a position for the French to shoot at him and not the one carrying the flag, because the flag had to get up there in 20 minutes. And sure enough, Gabar got up, planted the flag. Since then...
And we made our own flag, by the way, red and blue for blacks and mixed blacks, mulattoes.
They call him Gabar the Valiant One. And Capua got wounded, his horse got killed, or planted the flag. Since then, they call him Gabar the Valiant One. And Capua got wounded, his horse got killed, all kinds of things happened. But that was a choice to sacrifice his life so the others would get up and plant the flag. That was the plan. That was the organization that was put in place for things to happen. So when you understand the history, when you get into the details, even on the battlefield, the fraternity, the sharing, the sacrificing, my life, I give it so I will save these. This one will give his life to save those. That's what happened even on the battlefield with us. So we are a people that fought with fraternity, fought with sharing, with respect for one another, even respect for our enemies. Rochambeau had said when he wins the war and caught Dessalines, he would cut him up into small pieces and put him in sardine boxes. And Dessalines knew that. So when Dessalines won the war, Rochambeau tried everything to try to get out of the island without facing Dessalines. But ultimately, he was forced to come in front of Dessalines. And he wrote in his own journal, Dessalines was magnanimous. Not only did Dessalines tell him, yeah, if you had won, you were going to cut me up. I win, and I send you back to your people. You only have one message. Tell them, never, never should French military set foot here again. That's why I give you and your men your lives. So you can tell them, we are determined, you have to get. And that's how they signed the rendition, and we came to Declaration of Independence on January 1st. Jean-Jacques Dessalines. Yes, he experienced slavery, but he was always a free man because there was Tante Toya, an African woman, who taught him the history of the kings of Dahomey, who taught him, who trained him as a military. Tante Toya, who constantly told him, you must bring freedom to the island. I accepted to live in slavery only because I knew you, as I raised you, you will do the job of winning freedom here. So he was constantly being prepared. No chance, no hazard here. Preparation. A woman who raised her child to become a liberator, not by chance. training, discipline, organization, proper education, proper information. That's how he was raised. He was a military and he was also a doctor, as it is the principle in Dahomey tradition. If you have a profession where you have to hurt and kill people to protect your soul, you must also know how to heal when people are hurting. So Dessalines was trained that way. He was trained in the Dahomean philosophy. And when he became the liberator, later on, he became the emperor of Haiti, of the Empire of Freedom. That's how he would never just say Haiti. Haiti, the Empire of Freedom.
Continuing on.
This story that is playing out right now is, I'm curious what you think, how this speaks to the legacy of that colonialism.
I think that's exactly right. So, the legacy is that the Haitians were made an example of. They were told by the U.S. and the other colonial powers, you cannot do this.
Right.
There will be no liberation. There will be no self-emancipation. And if you, as enslaved people, take power, the white world, the Western world, will do everything in its power to salt the earth on which you live, to destroy your country, and make sure that you are suffering for generations and generations and generations. And it's not too much to say that more than 200 years later, they are still being made an example of.
All right. So how did the Haitians beat 4 European countries?
Before the revolution began, there were approximately 556,000 people in Saint Domingue, and about 500,000 were slaves. Like many other modern countries in the Western Hemisphere, Haiti comes from a long history of colonization. It was initially called Saint Domingue and spent years as a colony before a slave uprising began in 1791. Slavery on the island was tyrannical. Slave owners denied freedom to the people and believed they could abuse and even kill their slaves. The rebellion turned into a complete revolution, even though Western powers tried to quell it, and foreign powers were finally forced to surrender to Haitian independence in 1804, even if they refused to acknowledge that independence for years afterward. This was the first and only time that a slave rebellion led to a new country, and it started to change how many people viewed slaves, helping eradicate slavery in the West over the next 100 years. The Haitian Revolution has shaped modern history, and although the island has been working through political instability since, the people's resilience, displayed internationally in the Haitian Revolution, is still thriving today. How did the revolution begin? Before the Haitian Revolution began in 1791, the island was divided between the French and the Spanish. The French officially established their claim to the western third of the island in 1697. The area known as Saint Domingue was incredibly fertile and quickly became one of the most profitable French colonies. They exported high-value goods like sugar, coffee, and cotton, and the colonists were determined to maintain their favored and wealthy status. However, this success came at a cost. Over the 100 years that France officially had control over Saint Domingue, they brought in approximately 800,000 slaves from Africa. There was a high demand for labor, and the colonists used increasingly inhumane methods to intimidate their slaves. Throughout much of the 18th century, there were minor revolts and conspiracies among the slaves, but these were unsuccessful because the colonists were more organized than the slaves. As the threat of a slave revolt continued to increase, slave owners treated their slaves worse in an attempt to break their spirits, even though several people warned the colonists that harsh treatment would lead to revolution. The treatment of slaves in Saint Domingue was said to have been worse than in almost any other place in the Caribbean. The slaves outnumbered the colonists at about a 10-to-1 ratio, so the colonists worked hard to keep slaves from banding together out of fear. The colony itself was also divided. The three areas had differing social status and economic wealth, so they had difficulty banding together and underestimated the ability of the enslaved people. For a while, the colonists kept all ideas of revolution and equality from their slaves. But when the French Revolution erupted, even the strict censorship could not keep the news of the revolution from reaching the slaves. The colonists saw an opportunity to improve their standing in France. The revolutionaries also agreed that all men were created equal, and as leaders began to arise, the slaves finally found a way to band together against their oppressors. They built an underground communication network with over 200 leaders scattered across the colony. They gathered secretly and planned the rebellion that would eventually lead to Haitian freedom. Although one group accidentally started the revolution early and was caught, the colonists did not believe them when they explained the whole plan. They ignored the threat of danger and believed in their own superiority. However, their superiority wasn't enough to stop the Haitian Revolution. In late August, violence erupted in the northern province as groups of slaves rebelled. They marched across the region, killed or imprisoned anyone of European descent, and set fire to plantations. The groups had been severely underestimated, and now the colonists could not control them. They fled to the city of Le Cap, the heart of the colony. Within 48 hours, the slave rebellion had destroyed most of the plantations in the northern province. They then began marching on Le Cap. Although the first attempt to take the city did not work, the revolutionaries began a siege that left the city calling for help from surrounding islands and the United States. The very people that the colonists had oppressed suddenly had the upper hand. The revolution had begun, and the former slaves were much more prepared than anyone had expected.
Find the efficiency your...
Although the first attempt to take the city did not work, the revolutionaries began a siege that left the city calling for help from surrounding islands and the United States. The very people that the colonists had oppressed suddenly had the upper hand. The revolution had begun, and the former slaves were much more prepared than anyone had expected. Why was the revolution successful? Most slave rebellions throughout history weren't successful. The people were usually ill-equipped or lacked strong, sustainable leadership to carry them past an initial outburst. The Haitian Revolution was very different. These people had taken time to plan out the rebellion and pick strong leaders. So although not all the slaves had good weapons, they were well organized and had the benefit of surprise. The rebellion spread to the rest of Saint Domingue, although it wasn't as bloody in other parts of the colony. Plantation owners were left without anyone to work the fields, and the French army was struggling to bring the rebellion under control because they were not accustomed to guerrilla warfare. By mid-September, the slaves controlled enough of the colony that they could make demands like freedom from slavery. Many plantation owners did not want to concede because they didn't want to reward them for crippling the economy. They didn't think of the slaves as people, so the slaves shouldn't know that they should be trying to make life better for others. The Colonial Assembly tried to broker peace in late September by granting citizenship to free men and mulattoes, who were people of mixed ancestry. The French National Assembly revoked the limited rights to these groups 3 days later, spurring the revolution to new levels. Before, the people had believed they were fighting for France. But when the French National Assembly revoked those rights, the revolution transitioned to fighting for independence. The revolutionaries changed tactics, now determined to push the remaining Frenchmen from the colony and claim it as their own. The fighting was brutal on both sides. The revolutionaries regularly raided the remaining plantations and cities, and the colonists brutally murdered any rebellious slave they captured, including women and children. As the revolution continued, other European powers began to involve themselves, seeking to take advantage of France's weakness. Both Britain and Spain joined the fight, making alliances as the situation evolved. France found itself fighting a war in Saint Domingue, and in France, as the French Revolution launched into the Reign of Terror. The French government was in too much disarray to focus on crushing a slave revolt, and the revolutionaries began making more open alliances with France's enemies to get the supplies they needed. The French government was desperate to bring the Haitian Revolution to a close, so in 1793 they began offering freedom to any slave who joined the French side. In August 1793, Léger-Sontenax issued the General Emancipation Decree for all slaves in the northern province. However, this decree did not have any government backing, so many of the former slaves were still not satisfied, even though they were now considered laborers and earned wages. The French were beginning to grant the revolutionaries some rights, including limited working hours and a full day of rest each week. But they were still unsatisfied. These former slaves did not want wages. They wanted complete freedom, and that included having land of their own.
Yup.
One of the influential revolutionary leaders was Toussaint Louverture. In 1794, he rallied many of the different revolutionary groups together under his leadership, and he helped to begin pushing Britain out of the colony. His power continued to grow, and by March 1795, he was so powerful amongst the revolutionaries that he was able to save Governor-General Laveaux. The latter had been sent from France to establish peace and ensure the new labor laws were enforced. The mulattoes had arrested him because they were afraid he would take away their newfound power. Laveaux was so grateful that he promoted Louverture to lieutenant governor. However, Louverture was not satisfied with only being the lieutenant governor. He had big plans and prioritized his fellow revolutionaries, not the European countries, which would return his people to slavery if given a chance. The French had become increasingly wary of him and worked to remove him from power, By 1801, they had successfully ended their wars with Britain, Spain, and themselves, and had more troops to direct towards ending the Haitian Revolution. The French promised to restore prosperity, and as more of Louverture's forces joined the French and Louverture was arrested, it seemed like the rebellion was finally closing. The French might have been victorious if the revolutionaries had not realized their plan to reinstate slavery like they had in other colonies. The revolution erupted again. Revolutionaries mobilized and restarted their guerrilla warfare, and the French returned to the new race war, killing any former slaves suspected of plotting against them. Dessalines was one of the strong leaders who emerged in 1802. He began consolidating power, arguing that the revolutionaries should return the violence from the French. Under Dessalines, they killed any colonists they found, which had the unintended side effect of driving European interests away from the island. Fighting continued until 1803, when Napoleon finally lost interest in this unprofitable war. The French surrendered and left the island, leaving the revolutionaries to figure out how to build their own free country. Under Dessalines' bloodthirsty rule, the island remained isolated for years, unable to interact freely with the outside world. So although they were now free, their hardships were far from over. Dessalines completely cleared the island of colonists by murdering anyone of European descendants who remained. The new constitution promised an end to slavery, although the new military oppression was not much better. The Haitians had won their war, but now had a long way to go to create the free civilization they had fought so hard to win. How did the Haitian Revolution influence slavery in the West? The Haitian Revolution did not lead to the immediate emancipation of slaves in the West. For several years, most Western countries refused to acknowledge Haiti as an independent country.
This is a classic got up too fast tying your shoes back injury. Not to be confused with the you threw your back out.
Several years, most Western countries refused to acknowledge Haiti as an independent country. They were shocked that a slave rebellion had actually succeeded, and were fearful that recognizing former slaves as free men might lead to an end of slavery in their own countries. The implications of freed slaves seemed too much for the Western world to consider seriously, and they believed the revolution to be a warning of what would happen to their countries if they did not correctly control their slave populations. Even though the Haitian Revolution did not end slavery in the West, it did help to start the process of ending slavery. Slavery is a systemic issue that comes from objectifying and dehumanizing others. The revolutionaries proved that slaves were capable of the same analytical planning and tactics as any colonist. The French could not squash the rebellion, so they eventually had to concede to negotiate with them as if the revolutionaries were also people. Even though the French Revolution proclaimed freedom and equality for all, they were forced to confront what that really meant on the battlefields in Saint-Domingue, where they had to acknowledge that people should not live in slavery, even if slavery helped increase the profit margin. The Haitian Revolution shook the Western world, but Haiti today is still not stable. Because other Western countries refused to recognize the country for years, the people were left without access to many supplies they needed to rebuild. Military leaders and invaders ran the land after the island declared independence. The first democratic election was not held until 1990. Despite their years of instability, the Haitian people still have the same determined spirit that helped them win the only successful slave rebellion. They are continuing to grow and rebuild, so only time will tell how Haiti will continue to influence world history for the better. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history? Impress your friends and
Continuing on.
This is the United States as we know it today. The most powerful country. This is the United States as we know it today. The most powerful country in the world. A country that captivates as much through its culture as through its technological achievements. It is a reality that may seem persistent. This is the reality without any other alternative. But reality is merely the outcome of the sequence of improbable events from the past. Britain emerged from the 7 Years' War in debt and, in search of money, was forced in the 1760s to impose a series of taxes on its colonies. 13 colonies in North America rebelled against this injustice and waged war on the English until they declared their independence on July 4th, 1776. It was unlikely that in less than 100 years, these 13 colonies would become a world power. Yet, the actions of rebellious enslaved Africans led first by Toussaint Louverture and then Jean-Jacques Dessalines on a small island in the Caribbean will facilitate the chain of events that will allow the tremendous expansion of the United States of America.
I love watching.
Island in the Caribbean will facilitate the chain of events that will allow the tremendous expansion of the United States of America.
gonna skip forward.
On the night of August 14th, 1791, at Bois Cayman in the French colony of Saint-Domingue, enslaved blacks participated in a secret religious ceremony presided over by Dutty Boukman, a slave.
Dutty Boukman.
Of August 14th, 1791, at Bois Cayman in the French colony of Saint-Domingue, enslaved blacks participated in a secret religious ceremony presided over by Dutty Boukman, a slave from Jamaica, and Celine Fatimon, a mixed-race Mambo, during which they planned a large-scale revolt. By August 22nd, Saint-Domingue was a battleground with different factions vying for control over the colony. At this time, Toussaint Louverture, formerly enslaved, turned skilled military leader, began to rise through the ranks due to his tactical abilities, leadership, and diplomatic competencies. Initially fighting for the Spanish against the French, Toussaint switched sides in May 1794 after the French government officially abolished slavery. This was a strategic move that enabled him to gain the support of the formerly enslaved population. From 1794 to 1798, with his new French alliance, Toussaint fought and chased the Spanish and the British, who had invaded Saint-Domingue in 1793. Despite the French alliance, he acted with considerable autonomy, consolidating power and implementing his policies, such as restoring plantation discipline and labor. He thus succeeded in gradually diminishing the influence of France in the colony, although Saint-Domingue remained, on paper, a French territory. In 1799, a civil war known as the War of Knives erupted between Toussaint Louverture and his mulatto rival André Rigaud, who controlled the south of Saint-Domingue. Toussaint emerged victorious by July 1800, effectively bringing all of Saint-Domingue under his control. Having solidified control in Saint-Domingue, Toussaint turned his attention to the eastern part of Hispaniola, the actual Dominican Republic. The Treaty of Basel, signed in 1795, ended the conflict between Spain and France and ceded the eastern part of Hispaniola to France. However, the French authorities were slow to take actual control. Santo Domingo was still controlled by a Spanish administration. In January 1801, without France's consent, Toussaint invaded the territory, taking control by March. His successful invasion was part of his vision for a unified and autonomous island free from foreign interference and the threat of slavery. In July 1801, Toussaint enacted a constitution for Saint-Domingue which named him Governor-General for life and provided for eventual independence and an end to slavery. Although the constitution acknowledged French sovereignty, it demonstrated that he was the absolute master of the colony. Even though Toussaint Louverture succeeded in taking control of Saint-Domingue at the expense of the French, his authority was, to some extent, accepted by the metropolis, which after the French Revolution was won by Jacobinism. However, after the 1799 coup d'etat in France, power lay between the hands.
Say what?
Which after the French Revolution was won by Jacobinism. However, after the 1799 coup d'etat in France, power lay between the hands of the consulate, with Napoleon Bonaparte as the first consul and de facto the real ruler. Bonaparte, although pro-Jacobin at the beginning of his military career, did not share the progressive ideas of the French Revolution, especially regarding slavery. Before he came to power, the Directory that ruled France, in the context of the war against the British, was planning to invade Jamaica using the help of Toussaint Louverture. Bonaparte, at the beginning, embraced this idea. He even prepared a letter to send to Toussaint saying, "Train and organize the National Guard and the troops of the line. I hope the time is not far distant when an army from Saint-Domingue will be able to contribute to the extension of French possessions and glory in your part of the world." Bonaparte will never send this letter to Toussaint. The rise to power of this black general and his obvious ambitions made him see Toussaint as an adversary and not as an ally. Toussaint had taken the eastern part of Hispaniola when he had explicitly asked him not to. He also saw the constitution promulgated by Toussaint as an insult. He ended up taking sides with the lobby of French planters who had seen their essential source of wealth provided by Saint-Domingue disappear. Indeed, the harsh slavery system in Saint-Domingue before 1791 allowed for unparalleled sugar and coffee production. It was the colony that brought the most income to its metropolis compared to other colonies. Saint-Domingue alone produced 40% of France's exports. The slave revolt put a stop to this inhuman exploitation. Bonaparte wanted to restore it. However, he saw this restoration of the old system in a much more grandiose setting which better suited his megalomania. He dreamed of a self-sufficient French empire in America. While Saint-Domingue produced a lot of sugar and coffee, it relied on the outside to supply it with foodstuffs for the subsistence of its inhabitants. And given France's inability to send enough merchant fleets to meet the colony's needs, the colonists traded extensively with the English. And this was a practice that Toussaint continued by establishing trade agreements with England and the United States. So Bonaparte wanted to restore slave sugar production in Saint-Domingue, but also make sure to keep commercial exclusivity with the island. To do this, he was going to use Louisiana, a large territory in North America that became French after a secret agreement was signed with Spain in October 1800. Louisiana would produce foodstuffs, especially wheat, to feed the sugar-producing colonies, such as Saint-Domingue, Guadeloupe, and Martinique. The plan to get rid of Toussaint Louverture was also facilitated by the peace talks between France and England. Bonaparte had a freer hand to send large troops for his expedition. And when the French began to evoke their intention to restore their authority in Saint-Domingue, the English showed themselves favorable to this idea because the revolt of the slaves of Saint-Domingue was a bad example and a threat to the economic model which ensured the prosperity of all the great powers involved in the slave trade and the exploitation of the labor force of Africans. Bonaparte also had to rely on another ally in his quest to re-establish French authority in Saint-Domingue, Thomas Jefferson, the new American president. In July 1801, the charge d'affaires, Louis-André Pichon, met with Jefferson to have the support of the United States against Toussaint. As with England, France had now better relations with the United States after the quasi-war period of 1797 to 1801 when Americans and French clashed in naval combat in the Caribbean. Also, like England, the United States saw the Saint-Domingue slave revolt as a bad example for its own enslaved Africans. Already in Virginia, former slave Gabriel Prosser had planned a revolt inspired by the success of the blacks of Saint-Domingue. And Jefferson himself was very alarmist about the news coming out of Saint-Domingue. He anticipated that Toussaint Louverture would declare Hispaniola's independence to create an outlaw nation of savages who might even attack them to free slaves. Toussaint's capture of the eastern part of the island enriched the American imagination with the fear of a possible unleashed African republic a few kilometers from their coast. Although Jefferson agreed with France restoring the balance of power in the region, he warned Pichon that the United States had very lucrative commercial activities with the island and would like to keep these exchanges with a possible future French administration. Indeed, Saint-Domingue was very dependent on the United States for its supply. And what was implied in France's approach in seeking the support of the United States was that during the military operations of Bonaparte's men on the island, the Americans were going to supply the ports controlled by the French and would desert the ports controlled by Toussaint to starve the rebels. However, the attitude of Thomas Jefferson will gradually change regarding Bonaparte's plans. Rumors that France had secretly acquired Louisiana from Spain were confirmed. Also, Jefferson began to receive reports, and particularly that of his minister in Great Britain, Rufus King, that the objective of Bonaparte was not only to restore the French hegemony in Saint-Domingue and Guadeloupe, but also to take possession of Louisiana and particularly of New Orleans. New Orleans, located at the mouth of the Mississippi River, allowed American farmers and merchants from the vast interior territories to transport their goods, especially agricultural products such as cotton, corn, and wheat, to a major port for export. Once the goods arrived in New Orleans, they could be easily loaded and shipped to markets around the world. The early 19th century saw a boom in American agriculture in the territories west of the Appalachians. The ease of transporting these agricultural products down the Mississippi to New Orleans, rather than over the mountains to eastern ports, made New Orleans crucial to the American economy. New Orleans was a sticking point. Jefferson had to say, "There is on the globe one single spot, the possessor of which is our natural and habitual enemy. It is New Orleans." With Spain as a neighbor, the Americans felt more secure, as Spain had become weak and no longer had imperialist ambitions. Unlike Bonaparte's France, Jefferson, although a Francophile, did not trust Napoleon Bonaparte, who was obviously an authoritarian megalomaniac who will practice exclusive trade and who could invade their territory at any time. Faced with the Bonaparte threat, the possible independence of the blacks of Saint-Domingue becomes the lesser evil. Jefferson even began to speak well of Toussaint Louverture's management of the island. In a letter to Governor James Monroe of Virginia, he asserted that the blacks of Saint-Domingue had established themselves into a de facto sovereignty and have organized themselves under regular laws and government. And when Jefferson learned of the magnitude of the French Armada, it was clear that Bonaparte had hidden agendas. Under the command of Bonaparte's brother-in-law, General Charles Leclerc, the expedition comprised a massive force of around 30,000 soldiers. A considerable naval flotilla accompanied the expedition, consisting of numerous warships, frigates, and other vessels. 3,500 men under the orders of General Antoine Richepince will also be dispatched to Guadeloupe, where the actions of Battalion Commander Louis Delbers also threatened the authority of France. Bonaparte instructed Leclerc to disarm the rebels of Saint-Domingue and arrest their leaders, restore white hegemony, and re-establish slavery and the exclusivity system. After the order would be restored to the island, which Bonaparte estimated would take only 6 weeks, Leclerc was instructed to proceed to New Orleans to take possession of Louisiana and establish French authority there. This whole plan was, of course, kept secret. Even the planters who lobbied for the old regime were unaware that Bonaparte intended to restore slavery. Bonaparte had promised Toussaint that he would protect the freedom of former slaves, but Toussaint Louverture was not fooled. This is why when Leclerc's men arrived on the coast of Saint-Domingue in January 1802, Toussaint and his fellows like Jean-Jacques Dessalines, Jacques Maurepas, Henri Christophe, and La Plume were ready for war. However, despite the courageous resistance of the rebels, the French captured one after the other the main towns and ports of the colony. Cap Francais, Fort Dauphin, Port-au-Prince, Gonaïves, and Saint-Marc all fell into the hands of Leclerc's men. As resources dwindled, rebel-controlled areas shrank, leading to decreased morale. Christophe, Dessalines, and then Toussaint surrendered. Toussaint was placed under house arrest but regained his rank and properties by Leclerc. By early May 1802, stability returned to the island, trade resumed in ports, and the subdued rebels retained their lands and ranks. Despite being under house arrest, Toussaint continued to write to his men and asked them to be ready. Toussaint was invited to discuss with Leclerc, but saw himself being arrested and put on a ship for France. Before leaving, on June 12, 1802, he said these words, which will remain famous in history: "In overthrowing me, you have cut down in Saint-Domingue only the trunk of the tree of liberty. It will spring up again from the roots, for they are numerous and they are deep." Toussaint was imprisoned in France where, at the age of 59, he will die of pneumonia in the harsh cold of Fort de Joux in the Jura Mountains on April 7, 1803. Antoine Richepin's men in Guadeloupe also had a similar victory. After the suicide of Louis Delgers and 300 of his men on May 28, 1802, French authority was re-established on the island. But Richepins, who goes too quickly, restored slavery in Guadeloupe. In Saint-Domingue, the news of the restoration of slavery in Guadeloupe revived the spirit of revolt of the blacks, who knew they could not trust the French. Leclerc's attempt to disarm the rebels backfired, aggravating tensions. Black generals like Dessalines and Christophe, who had calmed down, resumed the rebellion. Mulatto officers like André Rigaud, Alexander Peshin, and Jean-Pierre Boyer, who Toussaint had exiled after the War of the Knives, were recruited by Bonaparte and were part of the Leclerc expedition. But they suffered the racism of the white French troops, especially from the second of Leclerc, the General Donatien de Rochambeau, who was as brutal against the blacks as the mulattoes.
About the company's financial condition.
Of Leclerc, the General Donatien de Rochambeau, who was as brutal against the blacks as the mulattoes. Rigaud was forced to leave the island. The mulattoes then understood that white hegemony would not serve their interests and joined the rebellion under the leadership of Jean-Jacques Dessalines. And Dessalines will shine as a relentless leader. Freedom or death became the motto of the reinvigorated revolution. The blacks were ready to die in battle rather than return to slavery. The French soldiers fell like flies in fighting, and the towns gradually returned to the rebels' authority. Also, an epidemic of yellow fever ravaged the ranks of the French, who had no immune protection against this tropical disease. Leclerc was in panic mode, having already lost more than 20,000 of his men. In October 1802, he wrote to Bonaparte advocating for a war of extermination. "We must destroy all the blacks of the mountains, men and women, and spare only children under 12 years of age. We must destroy half of those in the plains, and must not leave a single colored person in the colony who has worn an epaulet." He also asked for 30,000 additional soldiers and added in his letter to Bonaparte, "If you cannot send the troops I demand, the colony will be forever lost." Leclerc died the following month, suffering from yellow fever. Eventually, 20,000 additional soldiers from France arrived in Saint-Domingue in January 1803. These will be the last reinforcements that France will send to the rebel colony. When Bonaparte was informed of the death of his brother-in-law, he knew that Saint-Domingue was a lost cause. Meanwhile, in the United States and New Orleans, the situation was getting worse. New Orleans, which the French had not yet taken over, was still administered by the Spanish. The Spanish administrator Juan Ventura Morales decided to revoke the right of deposit. The right of deposit allowed American farmers to store their goods in New Orleans without paying customs duties. Farmers in the western states that bordered the Mississippi and depended on the port of New Orleans were furious. The revocation threatened the economic livelihood of these settlers. The issue was so vital that some even suggested that the Western territories might have to secede from the U.S. and align with a foreign power to ensure their economic interests. Others were considering war. President Jefferson was deeply concerned about the situation. Although he also thought war was an option to deal with the crisis, he still wanted to settle the problem using diplomacy. And learning of the debacle of the expedition of Leclerc in Saint-Domingue, he knew that this gave him time to discuss with the French, who will no longer be able to take New Orleans anytime soon. So, Jefferson dispatched James Monroe to Paris in January 1803 with an offer to buy New Orleans. Monroe was to join the U.S. minister to France, Robert Livingston, in these negotiations. The U.S. was initially prepared to spend up to $10 million just for New Orleans and, possibly, parts of Florida. While the U.S. envoys were prepared to negotiate for New Orleans, Napoleon Bonaparte's priorities were shifting. Tensions between France and Britain were on the rise again, and Bonaparte desperately needed money to finance this inevitable war with the English. Saint-Domingue was practically lost, and without Saint-Domingue, Louisiana was useless. The cash cow was Saint-Domingue. The role of the lands of Louisiana was to feed the cash cow. Bonaparte saw no point in defending this North American territory, which could easily fall into the hands of the English coming from Canada. He, therefore, preferred to cede this territory of 2,144,520 square kilometers, or 828,000 square miles, to the Americans for the modest sum of $15 million. This vast expanse of land stretched from the Mississippi River to the Rocky Mountains and from the Gulf of Mexico to the Canadian border. The American negotiators who only wanted New Orleans were stunned by this offer, undoubtedly the best land deal in history. Monroe, without even waiting for Jefferson's authorization, hastens to accept the offer before Bonaparte changes his mind. He signed the treaty on April 30th. Jefferson became aware of the deal in early July 1803, and it was then submitted to the U.S. Senate for ratification later that month. The Senate approved the treaty on October 20th, 1803, and the United States formally took possession of the Louisiana Territory in December 1803. Thus, without even shedding a drop of blood, the United States overnight doubled the size of its territory. Meanwhile, in Saint-Domingue, the rebels on November 18, 1803, had just fought their last battle in Vertières, where Rochambeau, who had succeeded Leclerc, would finally concede the defeat of France. On January 1, 1804, Saint-Domingue, which became Haiti, declared its independence with Jean-Jacques Dessalines as its head of state. Exiled to the island of St. Helene from 1815 to 1821, Napoleon will express regrets. One of the greatest mistakes I ever made, and that I still regret, was to send an army to Saint-Domingue, he confessed. If I had used an army of free blacks with French officers, it would have done indescribable damage to the English. I would have taken Jamaica, and their other colonies would have been compromised. The rebels of Haiti, fighting for their freedom without knowing it, allowed the Americans to change their course in the history of the world. The purchase fundamentally transformed the way Americans perceived themselves. The vast open spaces of the Louisiana Territory attracted immigrants from all over Europe, changing the character of the nation by increasing its social diversity. The drive to colonize this new territory has shifted the country's eyes westward, making further expansion almost inevitable and giving birth, if not to the term, at least to the forces behind Manifest Destiny, the idea that the United States had both a right and a duty to own and settle the entire continent. Before the Louisiana Purchase, Americans in many ways still had a colonial attitude. They still looked to England and France. With the acquisition of the Louisiana Territory, their focus shifted to their own continent. For the first time, Americans became Americans as we know them, people with a continental view. Home continent. For the first time, Americans became Americans as we know them, people with a continental view. It is hard to imagine that the 13 colonies which rebelled against England would have become a world power without their conquest of the West. And it's fascinating to realize that the Haitian Revolution, led by former enslaved people who were despised and dehumanized in pursuit of their right to exist, was a catalyst for this pivotal moment that will change the history of the world forever. Unfortunately, their exploit, far from being seen by their contemporaries as a light on the altar of humanity, will instead be a threat to the interests of the very people who brandished liberty as the new banner of civilization. All men are created equal was just ink on paper. American President Thomas Jefferson will not recognize this young nation, even though he had wished for their victory against Bonaparte and had even sold weapons and cannons to the rebels during their fierce struggle. He will seek to isolate Haiti, which thus, from its conception, was brutalized and oppressed. He knew full well that the Louisiana Purchase would not have been possible without the spilled blood of Haitians.
All right, we're almost at the end. Continuing on.
1492. Christopher Columbus lands on the island of Hispaniola and begins enslaving its people. 1492, Christopher Columbus lands on the island of Hispaniola and begins enslaving its people. European diseases and brutal working conditions bring the indigenous population to the brink of extinction. Over the next 300 years, hundreds of thousands of slaves are imported to meet the needs of their European colonizers. 1791 through 1804. Fueled by the ideals of the French Revolution, the Haitian Revolution begins when slaves and those of mixed race rise up against their oppressors in one of the largest and most successful slave rebellions in history. January 1st, 1804. Haiti wins its independence and becomes the first nation to be founded by former slaves. Fearing the spread of slave revolts, European powers and the United States pursue a policy of isolation towards Haiti. 1862. The U.S. officially recognizes Haitian sovereignty during its own struggle to end slavery, the American Civil War.
All right.
The growing fear of slave uprisings in the American South was intensified by the success of the rebels in the small Caribbean colony of Haiti, known then as Saint-Domingue. Saint-Domingue had been the most brutal of Europe's colonies in the New World, and the most successful, until a violent slave revolt in 1791 had changed all that, releasing hundreds of thousands from their bondage and overturning the plantation economy. But by 1801, peace and commerce had returned to Saint-Domingue, and a detente between the former slaves and former masters had come with it. While still a French colony, Saint-Domingue was moving toward independence, just as the United States had done 25 years before. That year, Saint-Domingue's governor, Toussaint Louverture, himself a former slave, declared a new constitution outlawing slavery forever.
Slavery's regime tried to create for slaves a very limited horizon in terms of what constituted their world. And one of the things that this Saint-Domingue Revolution was doing was really focusing attention at things that were taking place outside and opening up, to some degree, a whole set of possibilities.
As vice president, Thomas Jefferson urged Congress to cut off trade with Toussaint. Black sailors from the island mixing with American slaves in southern ports was a threat that could not be contained, he argued. But the trade was too profitable, and Congress refused.
Jefferson's fear was that Black Americans, like Gabriel, would be inspired by what they saw taking place just off the shore of America. And he spent virtually his entire career trying to shut down any contact and therefore any movement of information between the American mainland and the Caribbean island.
In 1801, weeks after Jefferson's inauguration as America's third president, he was visited by Napoleon Bonaparte's representative in America's new capital, the city of Washington. Napoleon, the first consul of France, was seeking Jefferson's help in reimposing slavery in Saint-Domingue. After the meeting, the envoy wrote to Napoleon that Jefferson promised that all necessary measures would be taken to starve out Toussaint and to aid the French army. In February 1802, the first of Napoleon's troops began to arrive at Saint-Domingue's harbors. After 4 years of peace, war resumed immediately.
Despite the French effort and despite the Americans' tacit support of that French effort, they managed, nevertheless, to establish independence, to resist and defeat the French force under Napoleon's brother-in-law, and establish an independent country on January 1, 1804, whose name was Haiti.
Haiti was now the second republic in the Western Hemisphere, and a stunning example for American slaves. It had taken 13 years and cost over 100,000 black lives, but there would never again be slavery in Haiti. Napoleon, now unable to use Haiti as a military base to protect French interests in North America and embroiled in other foreign wars, abandoned the New World, selling the Louisiana Territory to the United States for $15 million.
Well, it's ironic that despite Jefferson's own hostility to the Saint-Domingue Haitian Revolution, that the signal achievement of his administration was very much based on the success of that revolution. That was the purchase of the Louisiana Territory.
Bam. All right, we're going to end it off with two songs real quick. I want y'all to hear this, and if it doesn't play for some reason because of copyright, then I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like, share, subscribe, and just spread the word. All right, get the truth and the facts out so all the ignorance and the arrogance and pride cease among the ignorant. All right, we're gonna end it with two of my favorite Haitian songs.
Haïti, Haïti Bobo, Révolution, Independence. That's
Baby, écoute calme. Ok, je Baby, c'est mettre des mots impossible. Mais love ça, son love qui va vivre tout en tout. Oxe pipe bezepe, fini pipe sa pou fè. Oxe pipe bezepe, fini pipe. Biti midi tu pipe bezepe, fini pipe sa pou fè. Oxe pipe bezepe, fini pipe meche. Quittez-vous pour moi, mon ville, mon ville. Mon petit bébé, vous me bolez sous folie. Mon petit bébé, bol sous nerli. Mon petit bébé, soulève, 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 soulève. Mon petit bébé, soulève, bouche. Mon petit bébé, bol non poule, bol non poule. Mon petit bébé, bol sous tes côtes. Mon petit bébé, check it away, check it away. Mon petit bébé, je la gâte. Descends pipa, descends pipa, descends pipa. Check it away, check it away, check it away.
All right, and this is the last song. It's from Freedom. It's called Mama Mande Punu.
Nan kat kafou, nan tout la kou, e lese kou pou agonia. Docteur haïtien yo, mama mande pou nou. Aprendam haïtien yo, mama mande pou nou. Avocat haïtien yo, mama mande pou nou. haïtien yo, maman aime toujours. Côté patriote chaud, maman m'a pour nous. Haïtien le polo, maman m'a pour nous. Si nous qui dans la ria, maman m'a pour nous. Je n'ai tout jeune victoire, maman aime toujours. Père pasteur, artiste, tout soldat, tout péché, à tout quartier pour chevalier. Maman m'a pour nous. Maman veut encore. Maman aime toujours. Si ensemble nous vivons, si ensemble nous vivons. Maman m'a pour nous. Maman m'a pour nous. Maman veut encore. Maman aime toujours. Maman aime toujours. Si ensemble nous vivons. Ensemble nous vivons. Si me sénagang, si me sénagang, si me sénagang, yo, maman aime toujours. Journaliste haïtien, yo, Rastaman haïtien, yo, ébéniste haïtien, yo, maman m'a pour nous. El machin haïtien, yo, maman m'a pour nous. Sénateur haïtien, yo, maman m'a pour nous. Policier haïtien, yo, maman m'a pour nous. Sagement beau haïtien, yo, maman m'a pour nous. Petit haïtien, yo, maman m'a pour nous. Côté tout haïtien, yo, maman m'a pour nous. Maman m'a pour nous. Maman veut encore. Maman m'a pour nous. Merci en dans quatre carrefours, dans toute la cour et les secours pour Aponia. J'aime c'est le gang, yo, tout quatre, c'est pas jeune bon gros, fuck, pays change niveau, maman m'a défouné, maman veut concilier, m'a de la paix pour faire accent, déjà c'est même famille, mes amis gardent qui ça la fait, maman veut encore. Maman aime toujours. Si ensemble nous vivons, maman m'a dit pour nous. Maman m'a dit pour nous. Maman veut encore. Maman aime toujours. Maman aime toujours. Si ensemble nous vivons, si ensemble nous vivons. Christmas ne voit que frissi, maman, bonheur, souffrir les pouets de nous sortir, nous sortir. Dans quatre carrefours, dans toute la cour et les secours, Wabunia.
Boom. Boom. I love that part. All right, y'all. United we stand, divided we fall. L'union fait la force. Black power, power to the people. Freedom! Freedom! Freedom!